There we go, get that out of there. Hey folks, also code, why are you not on the screen? Let's fix that, my apologies. There we go. Better, getting there. Kind of impromptu stream today, because I felt like it. And I mean, I don't need a good reason to stream, right? The time of day is a little different because, as it turns out, I don't really have a job to go to anymore, which is fine. We'll just do our thing, make our game, and it means I have that much more time to stream and enjoy the company of you fine folks who are in chat. Hello! So, let's get the music under control. It's still... no, the music's fine. So, I didn't really know what to work on today. This was kind of like, I expected to have all day to sit here and think about what I wanted to stream, and I was like, oh, hey, look at that. I have all day to stream to my heart's content. And so, I just looked down my Trello really quick, and I saw a bunch of little things kind of scattered everywhere that would help the game be more playable. And really, they're nothing huge, but they're still things that would be nice to have, just in case. For example, this disappears when it's in an invalid state, and that's not particularly great, right? The player's going to wonder, why is it invisible here but visible here? Like, it's obvious, but at the same time, it would be nice to have that, like, turn red instead, or something obvious. Something more obvious, I should say. So we're kind of do a bunch of little, like, usability-based things, and then kind of work upwards from there. So yeah, let's start in on this, because on that ghost color, because that's kind of the most obvious thing, and the easiest thing, I should say, to fix up. So if I hop into my test world, we'll see that we have this. Oh wait, no, import. Where is it? Ghost coloring. All right, just making sure that the ads aren't playing in such a way that you guys hear them. Unfortunately, whenever I accidentally hit F5 to run the game, sometimes it instead runs the, it refreshes the dashboard page, which is, I don't know, currently what I'm using to interact with you folks. And then it plays an ad, and the ad is a pain. Whatever. So, let's see here. So, the first thing to note... The first thing to note is that we've got two constant colors in our shader, and the shader is really kind of one-dimensional as long as these continue to exist. So we need to swap these out for something that can be a parameter. And it'd be nice if this was one color instead of two. Just to, well, I guess we could just make one of these a parameter and work it from there. Yeah, we'll try it with one parameter, and then we'll kind of branch outwards, see what we need. Do they? It's not the end of the world for me to use Twitch's stuff. I mean, it at least gives me, like... I don't know. Doesn't really matter a ton to me. So, we've got this, and I'm going to add a little comment in here as just like, ghost main color. And this is going to be what we start manipulating when it comes to the actual change in code that tells us, oh, this is a parameter we should be setting. And I'm going to have to do a little research here, because this is also not something I mess with too often. The material system in this game is fantastic, or in this engine, I should say. Not the game, the engine. But the thing that I'm not really sure about is how to go about changing that in code. So let's dig around a little bit, because I know it's in here somewhere, right? It's got to exist. We'll just look for the word ghost, and yeah, ghost shed. Hello, Hecatonicles. Let's see, so, I'm noticing that I'm just kind of picking up the model from an actual model file. So let's see here. Ghost shed. Material. I wonder why this doesn't have a name. Ghost material. Whatever. And this is not going to have our change in it, so we'll just remake that change. And I'll reinsert my commenting and all that good stuff. There we go. So shed and footprint. Alright. So now we know the file has the change. Now we just need to make sure that this is valid footprint. We need to figure out where it's getting called from. Storage shed build tool, yes. If is a valid footprint. So this is the on click, right? Begin tool is always on click. So, and then tracking. So tracking is where we really care. Like here's our enable and disable. And we don't actually want to be enabling and disabling the node. We actually want to be doing something a little more obvious, such as changing the color. So let's see here. We have this shed blueprint model. Get material. No, really? Get object. Get material? No? So there's a way to change this color. The question is how? What do I mean with ghost fixes? Ghosts are what I'm calling the shadow of a building before you've placed it. And so right now there's some non-intuitive features that surround them. So I'm just going in and doing some little changes. Let's see here. Get material object. One of these should have it. Okay, so it's a geometry thing that has a get material object. So let's try and grab for that first. Actually, let's see. Does the material object have what we need? Really? Attribute lists, blend modes, but I'm not actually seeing what we're hunting for here. Sorry, here, I'll pull this over here. The idea is that I'm hunting for something inside this material object that should allow me to change the color of the shader. Shader attribute. Where are you pulled from? Oh, wait, you're an attribute. And our material object has a get attribute list. Okay, so I'm hoping I can dig through this. Find a color attribute. Okay, so I'll just probably end up searching for a color attribute and we'll be able to go from there. So, let's see here. A generic model pointer. Class generic model. Let's see what its subclass is off of. Subclass is off of model. Okay, so we'll now do class model. And that subclass is off of node. Not what I was hoping for. Let's see here. Get material of model. So I guess the one thing we could do is just load up the material by name. We do know its name. But I don't know if... So, I don't know if it creates copies for objects or if it just reference counts the whole thing. Let's see here. Terrain, model... change material. Let's see if we can find it that way. Of course, I'm just kind of flipping through the forums and hunting for something that will... How to change the character material at runtime. Okay, we're pretty close, right? This is... okay, so he's using a model. And the model should have... Let's see. The model should also have the geometry object attached to it and a skin controller. So that's... okay, because the model is just a group node under which the geometry exists. So what we should be able to do is find node. And we can find the node... let's just use the name. What did I call it, though? That is a good question. Let's figure out what I called it so I can actually jump in. Yeah, no, Ghostfix isn't anything too specific. It's just me poking around at some of the code. Okay, I just named it Shed. Derp, derp, derp. Okay. There we go. So, really? I have my, my chat window accidentally selected, and I keep mashing the backspace key, and of course, with the wrong window selected, it's not actually... It's sending the browser back, and I have to keep reloading chat. Accidentally, of course. Alright, so there's our shed. And that's just a node. Shed node. And this should just come out as like straight geometry. I want to double check this to make sure it's correct, but it should be fine. It should be pretty straightforward what we're trying to do here. Now that I kind of understand what the hierarchy looks like. Oh, okay, it's going to happen on track tool. So I click, and my breakpoint doesn't get hit. Oh, because it's on track. There we go. Ah, there's our problem. And the shed is enabled. No, we don't care if the shed's enabled anymore. In fact, this should just be else. There we go. Sure. Ask away. You guys are welcome to ask any questions. I just may not have an answer, depending on how elaborate your question is. Valid. Okay. So I'm just going to remove this breakpoint, toss this here. There we go. Okay. And if we... darn it. I can't win. Okay. We're going to look inside. Come on. Where's this? Okay. Find function. Yes. Node table if the hash is equal. Okay. So here we're returning, and it's a generic geometry object. And generic geometry is definitely castable to a geometry object. So at this point, what we're going to do, I'm going to break out of this, and we're going to statically cast this. Generic geometry pointer. Okay, so now we have a generic geometry pointer. This, I'm going to name this shed geometry to make sure the variable matches our intent. And the shed geometry is going to, let's see here, get material object. There we go. And it's the only material object attached. So we don't really have to worry too much about... we don't have to worry about which one to select, right? There's only one attached. So the index is always going to be 0. No if statement here, just material. Add attribute. So we have to now find the attribute. Find registered substance, get attribute list. So yeah, we're going to have to dig through the attributes and find the one that we need. Now granted, there shouldn't be more than one attribute in here. But just in case, and also just to make sure our code is nice and future-proof. And the big thing is, let's see here, attrib equals material, get first attribute. Attrib is not equal to a null pointer. Attrib equals material get next. No. Attrib next. There we go. Oh gosh. So Jalapenos Bud has a long question here. It's about C# being self-taught, seeking a job. I bought a giant book on C# and the .NET framework and was wondering, do you think I can get a job after reading the entire book, understand everything in it, and write some software to show off? And what C# terms do I need to know? Wait. Okay, so that's a difficult thing. It's possible, it's just difficult, right? Yes, you can learn C#. Yes, you can make something that is indicative of your skill set. It's going to be hard to get a job with that, but if you have a good enough looking portfolio, then it will override a lack of degree. That said, C# and .NET alone very much limits your programming job choices. You're kind of stuck in cases in which C# is like your only thing. Because it's great when you learn one language, right? You know that one language well, you can sit here and, speak, or not speak, but program in it, and do everything that you need to. The problem is when you get into job situations, you find that you need to know a very good standard of programming. Not just one language, but a broad basis from which to work. So, for example, yes, I know C#, but I also know Python. And Python allows me to write scripts that I could do the same in C#, but it would take longer. Or, the inverse example is, I know C#, but if one of my coworkers writes a script in Python and I didn't know the language, I would be shit out of luck. I'd have to learn an entire new language just to understand what they're doing in that script. I'm not saying you need to know every language, but having a breadth of languages, even if you have a strongest language, it is best to have not just a strongest language, but some experience with lesser languages as well, which is kind of the hard part. Just kind of getting in and understanding software engineering as a principle so that you can take what you know for C# and apply it to Java, or apply it to C or C++ or Python or Lua. And it really depends on what job you're trying to go for too. Obviously, you're not going to get into NASA without a degree, right? They don't care what your portfolio looks like without some kind of background. They're probably not going to pick you up versus, somebody who is self-taught and has I've published 8 games all on my own. I want to apply to work at this game company. Okay, now you've got a good chance of getting in. But it takes a lot of time, and it's definitely not a shortcut. Self-teaching is not a way to kind of avoid going to school, right? It's another method of learning that takes, I would say, just as long, if not longer, to learn all of the programming principles. Now, granted, I spent a lot of time in university twiddling my thumbs because they were teaching basic stuff I already understood. But I also had to test all those basic skills over and over and over. Writing one program that shows what you know isn't going to be the end-all. You're going to have to write a whole bunch. You're going to have to assemble a decent-looking portfolio before any recruiter is going to seriously look at your resume. So yeah, it's possible, just difficult. Get attribute type. So yeah, that's kind of my long form answer. Emission, let's see here. Interesting. Okay. No problem. Just doing the best I can to help out where I can. Okay. So, let's see here. We grabbed the material. Good. We have an attribute list of it looks like a single element, and that attribute element is a shader attribute. Good. And what can we do with this shader attribute? That is the big question. If attribute get attribute type equals shader attribute, there we go. If it equals that, not only can we static cast it, shader attribute, but we should be able to pull invalid type conversion. Shader attribute. That seems like a valid conversion. Cannot convert from an attribute pointer to a shader attribute. Shader attribute. Except that a shader attribute is of type attribute. So yes, it can. Did I spell something incorrectly here? That can't be right. Okay, first off, let's make sure it's got the full definition. C4 shaders.h. Right, that's step one. Make sure that the right dependencies are linked. And there we go. Now it's not complaining. There was our problem. So we need to figure out how to set parameter value. Ah, here we go. This is what we're hunting for. Now, it wants a vector 4D. That's kind of bizarre. Let's make sure we're doing this right. Let's see here. Shader attribute. Get shader graph. And set parameter value. Okay, so for vector and color constants, all four components of the parameter are used, so it's basically just using a vector 4D and then transferring it into whatever type we want. So, let's see here. So this is if it's valid, right? We want it to be this nice blue that it currently is. And I don't actually know. Let's just make it blue, right? Red, green, blue, alpha. Ta-da! What we're going to do is if it's false, we're going to go red. Red, green, blue, alpha. Yeah, there we go. That should help. Lilligubben, the engine is the C4 engine, which is not mine. I did not make it. I have a license for it, but I have not made it. There we go. And I'm going to kill that for a second. Oh, we are invalidating the shader. The most obvious step here. Material nope. Attrib nope, there's no invalidate here either. It's in here somewhere. Shed geometry. Invalidate shader data. There we go. So right now we're doing this every frame. We'll have to fix it so that we're not. But for now, this should be fine. Whole opinions about it really depends on what field you're hoping to get into. That can completely change the kind of thing you're trying to write. Why are you not... Okay, the shed. We grab the material. We grab the attribute. We set the parameter. If it is a constant, we skip it. Okay, that's fine. An emission output process. So, wow, it's digging through everything to find what it's hunting for. Glow output, bloom output. Oh. Nope, reflection output. Refraction output. Oh, come on. It's in here somewhere. Imposter depth, don't care. Scalar process, close. Are you a constant process is the question. And if so, what is your parameter slot? Not that, apparently. Okay, here's a color process, but it doesn't have the right type. A time process, here's the other color process. Okay, I only thought there were 2 color processes in here. Multiply, sine, absolute, lerp, alpha out, tangent view, something in here needs to give. Invert, multiply. Man, we had a big shader graph. I didn't realize just how large it was. Light output, and that's it. Okay, so the problem is it's not finding the shader in the right slot. Ghost shed, what is going on? Oh, you know what? we probably made a modification to this. Let's just double check. Yeah, you are marked as parameter 0, but we only saved it in the world file. We didn't push that data out to the actual model. Let's see here. Ghost shed, save, yes. Which language did I learn first? I was started in C. I went to a community college that firmly believed that C was the way anyone and everyone should start learning programming. And that even though it was a lot to take in at first, I think that led to me having a better knowledge of what programming languages were really capable of. Because once you know C, you understand a lot more lower level code, and then it's easier to go into stuff like C#, where, it's like, I just don't have to deal with memory here. It's not, I have to learn how to use memory. If you go from something like Java to C, where it's like, oh god, what are these pointer things, and how do I use them? For me, it was the other way around. It was like, what are these reference things? I guess I've used references before, but they're kind of like pointers in Java, so, It was just, I didn't have to learn a lot of details. I kind of was dunked headfirst into the pool, and then they said, alright, cool. Now everything else should be easier because of it. And I think that's kind of true. Let's see here. So, question is... There we go. Okay, constant process. I guess I should put a breakpoint in here. And there it goes. Off it goes. Alright, cool. So, that should do the trick. There, it's red. Ah! Look at that. Okay, so, the nice thing is, because this edge, is setting this thing to red, and we're seeing the very obvious change, the only thing left is the fact that it's fading between blue and red. That almost makes you think that it's like, it's almost ready, but not. What's going on here? Instead of here, where it's like, this is clearly good. So let's put a final fix into this. And then we should be able to be on our way. Move on to the next task. C4 Engine is definitely not free. The Visual Studio Express is free, but not the C4 Engine. Let's see here. So let's look at your color components real quick. You have a brightness of about halfway. Okay, and you're definitely not the same color. So my thought is, we're going to take this main color, and we're going to do something interesting with it. We are going to, here's our constant scalar. And we're going to put in, let's say 0.25, right? Low number. And can we get a color by multiplying these two together is the question. That is what I would like to do. Let's multiply this scalar by this color and pump that output into here. That would be nice. BMX like Michael asking if I know someone who has a good tutorial on how to learn to code. But you want to learn more. I don't really know a great resource to start with, right? I started with community college and a lot of books, so I didn't exactly have a good intro to programming in terms of like what books or what videos to start with. It was all very like I sat in a class with a professor talking at me. Granted, at the time I kind of knew a little bit of C, so that was one of the most boring things ever. But nah. Alright, so hopefully this multiply will work. Hopefully. And the hope is that we'll then we'll interpolate between the color and a darker version of that color, so that we don't have to have two colors separately getting set. So we're going to save it, close the material editor, export our model, as we always do, close, sure, save, and then run. And let's see if this works any better. There we go, I like that. Okay, now it's blue, and now it's red. Blue, red, blue, red. Haha. I like it. It looks better. I'm tempted to use green instead of red, or like a blue-green, or some nicer color than the standard stuff, just to not be using such obvious like red, green, blue values. Let's see here. Color. Color picker. Let's just use an online color picker to come up with something nice and pretty. I like pretty colors. Ooh, hey, and this gives kind of an analogous opposite color too. I like it. Alright, so our old color for being on was, let's see here, no red, but green and blue, pretty much all the way on. It was kind of a teal. That's close enough. And now the opposite color, is mostly red, but we also want to add a little bit of some other colors in, just to give it a little bit more kind of flavor, so to speak. And let's pull 1.25F, and let's pull this down a little bit. Red, green. There we go. Red, green. Let's keep the green. Yeah, let's keep the green all the way up. See how this looks. This should be good. Should be much better. Do I have anything playable? So as a game designer, I take that term very, very seriously. Something playable assumes that there's a mechanic, at least for me, right? I guess you can play with a toy. So, I mean, yeah, there's technically something playable. It's just, I don't know. I don't consider this a widely playable thing quite yet. Okay, so the other thing we'll notice is that we have no ghost whatsoever for anything else, right? The ghost doesn't exist for the farm, right? It doesn't even try. The generator doesn't have one, neither do the power lines. And that's something we need to fix, because obviously if you place one of these, we don't want you to be able to place it like on a funny edge like that, right? And there isn't even error checking right now, because we just placed this like inside. Yeah, there's definitely something here. It's just, it's not what I'd call the most playable of things. I'm working on it. We're getting there. We're doing a pretty good job, but there's still a lot of work to get done before we call this what I would deem a game instead of a toy. Have I read Jesse Schell's book? Oh gosh. I've read a lot of books on game design. Being a game design major, that's kind of my thing. Have I read his book on that specific one, though? I don't actually know. My music stopped. Let's get the music going again. There we go. Jesse Schell's, let's see here. Have I read Play with a Toy? I don't think I have. Oh no, The Art of Game Design. I've definitely read The Art of Game Design. That was a good one. That was one of my, not favorites, but it was definitely a good one. Yeah, Soulfoam, we have some mechanics in, and the mechanics are interacting with each other. So it's not like this is a completely, like, devoid of everything game. We're getting to the point soon where the mechanics are going to start kind of jumping all over the place in terms of all their interactions, and that's when I think this is really going to come together. The problem is, I've got some bugs and some issues, excuse me, that I still need to clear out before I can get to that point. Let's see here. Da-dum-dum-dum-dum. Alright, I think I've caught up on chat. So, okay, we fixed up this, which is nice. The only thing I'm noticing is that you can place things outside of visibility, and not only does it give you the height of something, which I don't know if I actually care or not, but it does tell you when there are, like, I can put one down here, and it shows not only the 3D model. Will I fix that? Do I care about that? Also, what is going on with this person? Oh, never mind. I figured it out. Someone is sleeping under the farm, because the farms don't do any vertex checking. You can just kind of slap a farm down anywhere, and it'll do its thing. Okay, so, one fix in. More, we have a lot more to go. Let's see. So, design theory, especially for games, is something that's good to work on alongside your coding. The two use very different parts of your brain. While programming will be a much more logical and what is that? I think that comes down to right side of your brain. You'll find that the game design itself is something that will turn into kind of a left side maneuver. And it's nice because you can kind of flex both at the same time and work them out almost simultaneously, depending on what project you want to work on and what you want to do. I just want to fix, I have a time of day. I'm trying to look at the game and it's dark. Which is fine. Don't get me wrong. It's fine that it's dark. In fact, it might even be nice to go so far as to add light sources, something like that. I keep setting the time of day back so I can stare at this a little longer and figure out what to do. What do I want to dive into next? I kind of figured that it might take me a little longer to dive into the shader data, and it really didn't. Not the worst thing. Also, I'm really curious if anyone's starved yet, but I have no idea because people keep disappearing into the wild blue yonder. And because they don't come back, like you can see them knocking trees out and returning them out here. But they're not actually going so far as to, like, you're not all that hungry. Are you? Are any of you hungry? No? Not hungry? Not really. I mean, they'll get hungry soon enough and have to return and pick up some food, but otherwise, eh. Okay, so what's next, right? We're looking for something that will add more depth here to the game. The valid blueprint stuff is nice. It's great that we have some gameplay going on. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to even commit the code, adds color changing to ghost shader instead of enabling, disabling node. Cool. Okay, so we've got that in, and that was a nice little fix. And I've got Trello here, so I really should be using this sucker. Let's see here. Always show, but change color based on valid placement. Done. Gosh, you guys haven't seen this, but I've been fighting a lot off stream with fixing the cell generation. I know the problem, and it's just an absurdly difficult task to refactor that code because I didn't write it the first time around, and everyone who I find the code for, like I find everybody who has written this algorithm as well, is either an academic who doesn't expect anyone else to be using their code, or they just kind of wrote it 10 years ago and never bothered to fix it up and clean it up and put it into like a usable state. Let's see here. So I could go back to chugging on that, but that's, I don't know. I'm kind of burnt out on that task for the moment. Berry bushes might be interesting. A woodcut and tree felling sound effect. That might get a little bizarre with everybody cutting on the same tree. Tree locks might be a more valid first thing to do. Placement ghosts for other buildings is definitely necessary. But I'm trying to think of something that will give me more depth. Right? An exploration job. Let's look at that for a sec. The idea of telling somebody to walk somewhere right now is bizarre. You say, I want you to walk someplace using this AI kind of set menu. And the problem is you can't really tell where you're sending them, right? This is kind of a terrible way of sending somebody in a certain direction. I wonder if I could put a button in here. Generate a new window with a remote camera attached to it and do a top-down view and say, this is where you would be sending the person. That might be kind of nice. I guess also the other thing to do is to create that other task I wanted to work on, just to have somebody scout an area. That might be worth a shot. Let's see. If I told him to scout an area, so if I want him to scout from here and scout everything in, say, like a 3-block connection, he'd generate a list of nodes that he has to walk to. And then I guess he would proceed to wander to each and every one of them in order. It's not the end of the world, and that would definitely take some time. But that wouldn't be so bad. Let's try it. Let's do that. Okay. Step 1. Get the UI to work. Our mission window, our task type, will have a task called Scout. Let's see here. Scout area. Sure, why not? Right? Yeah. Okay, so that's really the only addition we need here. We also need to go into our interface code. Interface. Where are you? Items, no. Input. Interface. Here you are, hiding from me. Okay. Mission window. This is what I'm hunting for. Okay, so... itch. Okay. We need an else if here. Text, compare text. Menu, item name says scout area. And this is the most manual of bindings. I'm not actually a huge fan of such a manual binding, but I'm also having trouble coming up with a much better way to bind them. Since right now... Actually, I could do this better, maybe. Could I? I mean, I could do this in code, right? That kind of defeats the purpose of having such a data-driven object, though. So yeah, let's not even bother for now. So, the mission job, we're going to add a subtask, which is going to be a new scout area subtask. And that hasn't been generated yet. But we are going to give it, let's see here, point 2D. We're going to give it a space to, kind of a center to work off of, and a depth. That should be int. Also, why? I would think that this would be a point 2D, right? You're walking somebody to a specific point, not to a vector. Let's look at that while we're kind of digging around. Subtasks. Travel to location. Yeah, for some reason this destination is a vector too. Let's just swap that. Destinations should be points, not vectors. And I've gone into this before on the stream, but honestly the big idea here is just that for something like a position, it should be a point because it's absolute, versus if it's something like a difference or a distance, you don't need that to be absolute. That can live within a vector. Vectors kind of give offsets of things to one another. While a point is not exactly something you can modify quite so easily. You can't normalize an absolute position, right? It doesn't make sense to do that. Anyway, rant over. Back to work. Travel to location, subtask. Not what I meant to go for. There we go. You're at point 2D and destination. Just kind of checking where it's used. Yeah, it seemed bizarre that it was in a vector. Although, look at that. It doesn't, whatever, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Okay, so the travel to location is fixed. It uses points instead of vectors. That was just like my OCD kind of kicking in. My OCD, which doesn't exist. Alright, right, new subtask. That's what I was working on. Let's see here. Subtasks, subtasks, feed me subtask, deposit, report knowledge, cut wood. Here we go. We'll put it in under the cut wood logic. And let's just copy and paste the travel to location subtask. Just because it's so incredibly similar. I mean, you're essentially telling yourself to walk in a bunch of locations all at once, right? In fact, whatever. Kind of tempted to try and do things with crazier or cuter methods, but I've been outsmarting myself a lot recently, and I really should stop doing that. Scout area subtask. So we'll call this the origin. Okay, you are also the origin. That goes there. Scouting area. There we go. So the question becomes, when you tell somebody to scout an area, do you want them to walk to that point and begin scouting? Should that be implicit? Or is this something that you want to tell them to do not so implicitly? So you say, walk to a location and then scout that area. I don't think it really gains you anything to separate the two. In fact, it's probably easier to kind of get everything put together in one node. So yeah, let's keep them together. Let's see here. Int depth. We'll call this cell depth, just to ensure that it's not accidentally confused with anything else that we write today. Okay, that looks good. And this is coming in below the cut wood subtask. Cut wood subtask. Alright. So we're coming in beneath this sucker. I'm just kind of copying and pasting to save myself some simple typing. There we go. And this is not needed. But as it turns out, this is. In fact, I'm just gonna pop some of these in place. There we go. We don't need the override here anymore. There we go. Oh, one more. One more. Okay, origin and center get initialized off of each other, and cell depth and depth are used together, and that should not be comma, that should be a colon up there. Get setting count. We have 2 settings, minimum. Yeah, we'll just say 2 for now. If, actually not if, switch, index. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little setup here so that because it's configurable, we can give it settings and then have those settings modify what's coming and going from this data structure, and that will automatically populate that little window underneath with all the details of what we're doing. So we're going to return a new, the first one, let's see here. Actually, first off, this is 3 settings because there's no such thing as a vector setting, so we have to do X and Y separately. So float setting, we have to give it an identifier. So this will be origin X, whose value is origin.x. The minimum, I don't know, just to keep it from going too insanely out of bounds or to do anything stupid. I'm just using 1,000 as kind of my arbitrary edge. Let's see here. I had in the travel to location. Okay, I'm using 100 in the travel to location. That actually seems more logical. Step 1. And I don't really care about anything else. So let's just do that. Case 1, return new float setting org y. Ha! Maybe I won't use that. There we go. Let's just change that. Don't mind the programmer typing naughty things. Minus 100, 100. Standard stuff. Obvious stuff. And finally, the last one is an integer setting, where this is going to be cell depth. Cell depth. I don't know. I like these identifiers to be gobbledygook, so that if you start using random words, especially 4-letter words, which is hilarious because that's all these can be, I don't want any pattern to arise, because the moment patterns start to arise, the whole point of using this 4-character identifier constant is that you don't want them to collide. So you kind of throw that out the window if you start using a, let's see, scout depth you really throw that out the window the moment you start to use patterns. Suddenly you'll start kind of stepping over your own feet in terms of, oh look, now I've used this, now I'm doing this. And before long you find yourself kind of colliding all over the place, and that's going to cause bugs that we don't want to fight with. The step is 1. Ta-da! Okay, cool. So we've got our get setting. Set setting is pretty much kind of the same, except instead of switching on an index, we're going to switch on the setting identifier. So for example, that case 0, let's see here, or not case 0, sorry, case oryx, right? And this works because this 4-letter identifier simplifies down to a 32-bit integer, which is something that a switch can create case statements off of, which is really nice for us. Float setting pointer setting. Oh, and this needs to be constant. Get float value. And we're going to take that float value and dump it into origin.x. Ta-da! And of course, I hate the way Visual Studio does that sometimes. Or y equals that. Break. And finally case cdpt. See, and this is the nice thing. Once again, I've got these random numbers. It forces me to double check also instead of just blindly typing things. Because if I mess one of these up, then the setting isn't going to be set correctly. And then we're going to have problems. Integer. Hope they fix auto-delete stuff. Yeah, it auto-deletes way too much stuff right now. They try overzealously to enforce certain patterns upon the user, and I really hate it when they do. Oh, and this, I just realized, we have to return a null pointer at the bottom, because obviously if they say, well, what's the index of 3, we'd just run off the end. That wouldn't be good. Also, what else is it complaining about? Oh, haha, that just wasn't necessary anymore. Depth, cell depth. Oh, no, it should, what are we going to default this to? Let's default it to 2. Why not? So the idea here is you walk them to a point, and then you tell them go to every cell that is X neighbors away. Okay, so let's see here. AI. So we filled out the settings. The move now is pretty... This is going to be interesting to fill out. So first off, if the path element is 0, we need to... God, I kind of wish I had a pre-process step in here. But at the same time, if your path changes or if something happens, I'd be worried about uneven pre-process calls going on, and that's more effort than it's worth right now. We're not going to even bother. Let's see here. Quick lookup. Just to see... Oh, wow. Okay. Alright, so we have to fill out the path if we have a given point. So the first thing to do is we have to tell the person to pathfind to the, what we're calling the origin right now. So Kotufan asks, why not have the travel to location subtask go first, and then just have the scout area task do the moving to surrounding areas and run that after? So that makes sense in some ways. right? But the problem is when you start adding multiple subtasks in, you now have this problem of showing the data. So the data in the AI doesn't match the data that's in the box. For example, let's see here. Do you build? You should build. Yeah, you build. So when I click on this and I have this, okay, if I were to say scout an area and add this in, granted it doesn't do anything right now, but with a scout area task in here on its own, what we don't want to do is have this task list here that's being presented to the user differ from what actually exists in the user interface. Yes, it would be a little easier for us as programmers, but that reuse is going to be something that would ultimately cause a disconnect. I'd be afraid that at some point the two either, like, I click submit, and then if I can view his mission later, it would show two different subtasks here, and that wouldn't be... I want this to essentially mirror exactly what they're doing. That's kind of why I'm not using the travel to location subtask, as much as I like the two being very similar. Now what I can do is I can take the code inside the travel to location subtask, and I can take this and write a quick function out of this so that everything that's done in here, we're not copying and pasting code. We're just kind of, oh, this code that runs this subtask will look very much like this code here. Grouping of subtasks might be nice. Once again, though, we're adding a lot of complexity for a very simple thing right now. Okay, once we start grouping subtasks, we have to start showing those subtasks. We have to be able to, expand and retract the subtask groups. And we start getting into a lot of extra work for something that doesn't gain us a lot of gameplay, right? We don't really care whether or not they're grouped or not. We just kind of want them in here. So let's see here. And also, we have to... Ooh, I didn't think about this. This is something I didn't really consider. Right now, find path only takes you to a point. We need to concatenate multiple paths here to get this to work. Not the end of the world, but more work. More work I did not think about up front. Also, the user interface, it should be able... I think there's a tree task. Let's see here. Panel. Task list. Let's see here. List. No. There's like a tree. Yeah, this. Okay, it looks exactly the same. Thanks. It might be nice to use the tree instead. Let's see here. We use the tree. We start grouping the subtasks. Yeah, I don't see this gaining us enough for me to really go through all that extra effort. At least not right now, right? Maybe later when I've got something further along and more playable, sure. But for now, I don't care that much. Let's see here. So we need... I'm just going to copy and paste all this for now. And then we'll clean it up and get it specialized to what we're hunting for. Specifically... Okay. If it's empty, what we need to do... We've got this. So we not only need to wander to our center destination, but we need to wander to each cell. And we need to make sure that we also don't kind of double up on cells, or that we're bouncing all over the place, right? We want him to walk in a somewhat methodical pattern from cell to cell. And this is going to be the difficult part, right? We can have him randomly walk to cells pretty freaking easily. What we don't want him to do is bounce around randomly or take like the longest possible path where he's like, I'm going here, then here, then here, then here. If we could isolate... Okay, well, obvious stuff. Walk us to the origin. Origin. Max height change. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we've got a path to the center point. I am not going to use let's see, path to origin. Okay, so we've got the path to the origin. Now we need to essentially step through each one in a meaningful manner. This is probably why I didn't dive into this task the first time through. Let's see here. Phone, why are you blinking at me now? What is up, my phone? Oh, wow. Okay. Dang. That was fast. Usually, you send a resume and cover letter to a company and it takes them quite some time to get back to you. That did not take long at all. Also, the other hilarious thing that happens when you lose your job is you have 1,000,001 recruiters start trying to add you on LinkedIn. Not understanding that they can message you without adding you on LinkedIn. It blows my mind. Alright, so how do we do this? How? So we could walk them through from the origin to each leaf. Because the problem is we've got this like cyclical graph going on. And we want to make sure that we wander from one thing to another. Let's see. Yeah, I kind of like what Ducos has here. Get the nearest chunks, sort them in order from closest to furthest. I think that's probably the best way to do it. You essentially grab one and you just go, okay, who hasn't been traversed yet and is closest, right? And we can just go through each of those one at a time and do that. I like that. I'm gonna do it. So let's see here. First things first. We have to grab everybody who happens to exist within a certain area first, right? We have to get all what I'm calling cells, are Verneuil graph cells. We have to grab every single one that's going to be a part of the system. So probably all the cells, right? Yeah, that should be good. This will be our scouting cell array. And we're going to go into our game world and we're going to get the cell graph, and actually I should just pull that out to its own variable. Cell graph pointer terrain cell graph. I'll just call it the terrain graph for short. Okay, so we've got the path to the origin, and now we're going to go through and this code already exists somewhere else, and I don't want to copy it, so let's just break it into a function. Specifically, I think it exists somewhere in the game world. Nope, not in the game world. Okay, it's either that or like one of the terrain generators or the world generator itself. The world generator probably has it then. Trees per square area, town center, visibility. Fix up controller initialization to not include new controllers on immediately turn. Whatever. Okay, this little lovely function, this recursive function here. I see why this lives in here. Just not the happiest camper that it lives in here. Well, we can use something very similar at bare minimum. Let's see here. Here it is, cell. And at the cell graph, we're just going to have find path, void, find cells in area. Let's see. Find depth cells, find cells. Yeah, find cells in area. Point 2D. So let's see, we're gonna hand it, are we gonna hand it a point? Yeah, we can hand it a point for now. Also, that is in the wrong spot. Start, C4 array, cell pointers. This will be total cell count or total cell array. Is that really all we need? Oh, no, we need the depth. We need that depth in here. All right. First off, a get cell function where we pull the cell that's under the starting location. Let's see here. Simple graph traversal should not be difficult, and yet sometimes it really can be. Total cell array. We need to clear out. Yeah, we're just going to clear it just to make sure that if we call this a whole bunch of times, that we're not doubling up on data or doing anything too stupid. Get cell. We're going to do something very similar. Depth. This. Start cell. We're going to use a recursive function. And we're going to, let's see, what are we going to call this? This is our, not reveal terrain, obviously, because it's not actually revealing anything. Like gather. Gather's a much better. Much cleaner. Alright, so we're going to gather our terrain. And we don't care about any of the old stuff that floated around before. Really, Visual Studio? Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, we need to pass it, of course, our cell array as well. Which this needs to be a reference. Otherwise, this whole thing is not going to work. There we go. And let's see here. Cell graph. La da 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 da. All right. Total cell array. Add element. Actually, we should check if it already exists inside. So if this new cell If it's not inside of it, then we add it. And then we proceed to go to all of the neighbors. Depth less. Okay, total. Right. There we go. Yeah, zonal cube, the kind of some of the highest level details live inside the stream description below. And every once in a while when you see the game, I'm happy to answer questions about it then. But unfortunately, at the moment I'm kind of in the middle of something. Set animation must point to class. Oh, okay, it's complaining about things somewhere else. That's fine. As long as that code compiles, that's really all we need. Gather, find cells in area. So we're going to use our start point, which is that origin. The scouting cell array. I mean, the best I can give you just while I'm doing other things, cell depth, is a, let's think here, it's RTS and survival simulator kind of mashed together. A lot of my previous videos also have me giving very, very long descriptions of what I hope this game will turn into. But the big idea is that it's not about your standard RTS like StarCraft, where it's beating the snot out of your enemies, but more about scavenging supplies, doing what you can with limited visibility and limited information, and then going out on missions, sending people, I should say, out on missions to bring back information, supplies, and anything else you can find in order to help you kind of survive the entire time. So KotuFan is making a really good point. Every task requires moving to a location first. Yes, pretty much every single one does. And so part of me kind of wants to go through and see if there's a way to group them up, or do something at least that can simplify so I'm not doing as much copying and pasting. Because this is kind of stupid, right? I shouldn't have to tell every task to do some simple part that another task already has as well. So I've already got a job system, right? And the job... I kind of have arbitrary grouping, but it's not in the same way I would hope it to be right now. I wonder if I could add some arbitrary grouping. And have that arbitrary grouping be selective. Well, no, you'd have to only be... That would be like a view-only kind of thing. Granted, that might not be the end of the world, right? If a single object could collate all of its sub-objects' tasks together into a single piece. I don't think I used the word collate there correctly. Collate, collect, and combine. Ah, I did. Ha ha! Or appoint a member of the clergy to a benefice. No, not that meaning. Other meaning. Collate. Put together. Concatenate. Okay, we'll do that after. We'll look at that next, because that is a good thought, and I really want to hang on to that, specifically because right now there is a lot of copy and paste code, and there's a lot of duplicated functionality. So I'm just going to scribble. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to scribble a note. I'm actually going to go so far as to jump back into my Trello, which you guys have access to as well. It should be one of the links down below in the project where you can kind of see what my to-do list looks like in here. And what I'm going to do is just add a new card here that says, oh gosh, allow subtasks to move it over so I can actually read what I'm typing. Allow subtasks to contain other other task types in tree format. Right? We definitely don't want a graph, or at least a cyclical graph format, but a tree format would be nice. So, and I'm going to move this somewhere near the top just so I don't forget about it. So the big thing here, and that I know I've heard a lot of people say Dwarf Fortress or No Moria or Towns or something like that. The idea here is that, let's see here. I just want to make sure everything here is kind of happy and working. Okay, let's give her a spin. Not that kind of spin though. The difference between this and a lot of those other simulation type games is that here you're working with limited information. The idea being that you send somebody off on a task and the visibility is very limited. For example, let's send a guy on a very basic mission, right? We tell him to go out to, like, I don't know. Right now it's arbitrary positions, right? But there he goes. He goes off to do his mission. And when he's done, he's going to come back and he's going to report all that information to us. So while he's off the screen, you can't actually see where he is, what he's doing, or if he's even still alive, right? All that information kind of disappears. Now, there will be a point where you can set up cameras with spools of wire and stuff like that to generate more visibility. And you can also go so far as to create something like radio systems so that you can have the people who are out on a mission call back, and you can see what they see while their radio is on, but the radio being on will drain the battery resource attached to that radio. So you can't just have him know things all the time. Here he comes. So now that he's got this information, we don't get that new information until he arrives. And when he gets back, I don't know where he's going. There it is. But now you can see, here's all the land that he's been to, but you'll notice that you still can't see it too well. Like, it's grayed out. I need to gray out the trees too, but that's for a later thing. The idea here is just that information is going to be sparse. That's kind of one of the big things. If someone just straight up doesn't come back, you then have to make the decision of, what do I do to deal with this? Do I send someone out and try and kind of scout for their body? Do I look for something that killed them? Do I, what do I do? It's a good question to make players ask. It shouldn't be something like the most obvious move. I just kind of, oh, well, I'm going to blindly do X and then Y and then Z. I want some exploration. I want some curiosity, and I want some tension in terms of what happens in certain cases of people not returning. Sheesh. Oh, you're just starving to death. That's what you're doing. Okay. So, anyway. Da-dum-dum-dum. Alright, oh, I didn't even test what I meant to test. Whoopsies. No, I don't want to stop debugging. Mission. Scout area. Okay. Interesting. So, it clearly caught on the fact that I told it to add that task, but it did not catch on the... Oh, because I didn't add a list widget for it. Scout area task. There we go. Gotta do that, apparently. Otherwise, shit don't work. There we go. And now you can see the scout area task actually has, like, those settings that we were giving before. And you can completely modify these and say, oh, I want you to go to -1, -1, and I want you to search for everything in a 3 depth. And then it crashes, because I didn't do something quite right. Oh, because I never created a path. That's fine. Oh gosh, people with questions. Nevitsu asking, made several games before, Can teach myself. Is it worth going to a programming university, something like computing, or is it useless and I can just take electrical engineering? And people answering him well before I've even read this stuff, which is great. I'm glad you guys are having good conversations here. So the thing you're going to find pretty constantly, Nivitsu, is that pretty much any employer is going to do one of two things when they see you don't have a degree. They're going to either A, throw your resume out without even thinking about it. They're just going to look at it and go, nope, don't care. Or the other thing they're going to do is they're going to say, great, you know this stuff, prove it. And they're going to make you go through a lot of hoops that somebody at a university who has that university degree is not going to have to do. And in most cases, you'll see jobs that just say straight up, we just want somebody who's got at least a bachelor's in computer science. It's not really useless. A lot of stuff that you can teach yourself is kind of the basics of what they're going to teach you at a university, and then they're going to go into more detail on things that you can't just teach yourself without a lot of work. For example, knowing how to mathematically prove the big O of a function, or the sigma of a function, or the little o of a function, right? That's the kind of stuff that, yeah, you can kind of teach yourself, but unless you're a really big math buff, it's really, really difficult to kind of pick up that information on your own. Other stuff includes, I took a computer architecture class and a console architecture class. And the console architecture was nice because we actually opened up like an Xbox 360 and a PS3 and rooted around inside and kind of pointed at, okay, here's the processors, here's where they attach to the bus, here's where this goes in. And we went through the pure theory of actually making something like a game console. And it helps you understand why a console can get the performance it can with the hardware it has. And that's, once again, stuff like that is not something you're going to really easily come across as a self-taught programmer. Now, granted, I've met some self-taught programmers who are better at programming, I should say, than university programmers. But at the same time, it's kind of a mixed bag. You go back and forth. Are you going to learn a whole lot of stuff you never imagined? You'd learn some stuff. I mean, the funny thing is, university bounces back and forth between being very helpful and very stupid. You're going to find yourself like, okay, I have to write a linked list class now. And that's the most boring shit you've ever done in your life, probably, because you know how linked lists work, and you should never have to implement one unless you're really, really desperate in the real world. That said, having implemented one yourself, you kind of tend to understand the innards of it maybe a little bit better than if you just used, the STL linked list or set classes. Also, most universities' courses are project-based, at least the game design ones, which means you end up making a bunch of stuff and it makes your portfolio look that much more impressive. So I would say, I think I got quite a bit out of my education. To the point where I lost my job yesterday. I already have what looks like somebody who at least wants a phone call on hiring me. Or possibly. We'll see. And that's kind of cool, right? That's 5 years of experience and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Game Design. Pretty neat. Okay, I don't know why I'm staring at this like busted code. Let's see here. Path get elements. Okay, so we're never actually assigning any of this to our path. Yes. Yesterday I lost my job. I got a phone call from my boss and the manager of HR, and they said, hey, yeah, bunch of people are getting pink slips today. You're on the list. So, yeah, how it goes. How it goes. Yes, the OnLive job, my full-time paying job, which is why I'm here bright and early, streaming for as long as I can manage today. Don't be sorry. It happens. Like I've said it before, when you work at a startup, you get paid a little more, but there's always that risk that the startup doesn't go anywhere. And if it doesn't, you tend to get cut, right? Engineering is not, it's necessary, but if you're on an engineering project that isn't the main core focus of the company, that's just kind of what happens, right? You tend to be one of the first people to get cut. And that's fine. It's fine. You guys have no need to apologize. This is a opportunity for me to go and actually work at a real game development studio somewhere. That would be my dream, right? Being set up as a not just programmer but designer somewhere, because my programming skills are top notch. I think they're fantastic. I've been working with them a lot. I've been learning everything I can, but I also want to, I don't know, work that creative side of a job. Be able to do prototyping, work on actual gameplay elements, like what I'm doing here on stream, instead of futzing with, just code for, something no one will ever see, right? Back-end code is fun, don't get me wrong. But it's nice to work on gameplay elements. That's really where my strengths come out. Let's see, where was I? Oh, I'm concatenating these two arrays together to get this working. It's not really fired, so to speak. I mean, I got severance and I got all kinds of good stuff. So I mean, it's I don't know. It's pretty standard for me. I keep working at startups, and this keeps happening, yes, but that's what I get for working at a startup, right? It's a volatile market. If something goes wrong, we don't get funding. How it goes. Try to join Frostbite? I have no idea who that is. Like the engine makers? Frostbite, what, studio? Because I know there's the game engine, like the Mass Effect and, is it Battlefield? I think Battlefield also runs on Frostbite. I'm not an engine guy, though. So I'm not really, I don't know. Anarchist 101 asks, how old was I when I started programming? Oh, Lord. Let's see, 5 years of professional experience, plus, say, another 4 or 5 years of, is that right? So I've been doing this since I was, like, 18. I'm almost on the 10-year point, I think. I'm at 9 or 10 years. About then. Is it too old to change your career, though? Never. I have a friend who is getting into computer science after trying and, getting kind of the short end of the stick on her career repeatedly, and she is now getting into computer science. I think she's a couple years older than I, and she's just swapping over, and it's like, yeah, no, she can get into the market just fine. You're going to find yourself maybe a little further behind from the people who, like live and breathe this stuff since they were in high school. You're going to be a little behind, but it's not the end of the world because stuff changes so often that it's actually really easy to catch up on the newest, latest stuff. And then once you're on the newest and latest, you're up with everyone else. It's not a big problem. Oh gosh, questions. Got any suggestions for fixing or bypassing common language runtime version errors? No, I do not. I have no idea what that means. That can mean a lot of stuff, depending on language, compiler, all kinds of stuff. Urani is asking, did they teach me OpenGL or DirectX in university? Yes. I was taught a lot of OpenGL. We used OpenGL for a lot of the early low-level projects, and then we proceeded to, I don't think we ever did DirectX work, except through XNA and C#, so that doesn't really count. even though it's really just a C-sharp wrapper around DirectX stuff, still. But a lot of OpenGL, yes. Red 5 is hiring. Ah. Red 5, where are you guys? That is the question. Like, it's also really nice to have a lot of these studios like around, since I'm in like the dead center of the Silicon Valley. But that also means that a lot of really cool studios that are overseas are kind of out of the question because I just bought a house. And that makes it really difficult to move. Let's see here. Dum 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 dum. Gosh, lots of chat going on, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Singular. DICE. Oh, I would love to work at DICE. I would be so happy working on the next Mirror's Edge or something like that. Oh, that would be a dream. Unfortunately, DICE is in Los Angeles, as far as I know. Which, once again, kind of precludes my ability to move. Let's see here. Which language for games? C#, Java, or C++? I personally am not a big Java person. But that's my personal preference. I learned C and C++ and C# before Java, practically. So, for me, Java is just kind of like... I don't know. It's just got so much cruft and extra crap in it that I don't think is necessary, and it's so over the top, I don't really like it, personally. And once again, this is all personal opinion, right? I know people who do amazing things with Java every day. Those people are not me. This is probably why I don't work at Google, because a lot of the stuff they do is Java, and I am just not a great Java developer. How it goes. I definitely like C# more. I like C# the most. If there were a great 2D framework or game engine like XNA in C#, I'd be really happy. And don't say Unity. I know Unity exists. They don't use it in the same way. I like to program my games, not use an editor to make my games. What kind of stuff could you expect at a computer science university? Project-based courses? I mean, it really depends. Look at the syllabus. That's really the easiest way to know what you should expect. There's some really crazy stuff in there. Really crazy stuff. I opened up an Atari 2600 and got to figure out how it worked. And then we theoretically built a computer that ran faster than it. And that was really cool. And that was one class, right? I took a 3-class series where we planned the game, programmed the game, polished the game. 3 quarters. It's a lot of time spent on one game. But we had teams and it was great. Let's see. Supercell or Rovio? I thought Rovio was a mobile developer, and I'm not a big... My mobile skills are also not all that great. Supercell, yeah, mobile game developer. Supercell is Clash of Clans. There we go. And not a fan of mobile games. Just not my thing. I can learn to love them, but meh. Da-dum-dum-dum-dum. What's funny is you think I'd be like pining to go work at Valve, but not really. I wouldn't want to work on the same game for so freaking long. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I don't see Valve as like the golden arch for what gaming or game developers should be anymore. Riot Games, yeah. I've definitely heard Riot Games. I've got a friend in LA who's saying that I should go down there and do that. If I had a dream job right now, I would probably say... That's actually kind of difficult. Supergiant Games, I think, would be my dream job. Right? Designer, developer at Supergiant. Guys who made Bastion and Transistor. Whew. Their games, those make my heart flutter. Anyway, we should get back to work. I have one last question, then I'm going to kind of dive back into my code. Do I prefer Unity 3D, or should I make an effort to code my game in Visual Studio using C++ or C#? Unity has its perks. The nice thing is, I see Unity as one of the best prototyping tools around. They have the libraries and the engine, and everything's already in place, and you just kind of dump it into the editor, and you can attach things on the fly. The problem is it ends up making a very messy game. And so, because it's so messy, you kind of get caught up in some of the details of... in some of the details of it. And if something starts to go wrong, you have problems finding where it goes wrong. Some of Unity's error messages have, in the past, not been the greatest thing ever. Can I explain the node system? Depends. There are a lot of things that are marked node. I have a node system in here. Unity has its own node system. Node.js is a different engine. There's a lot of node stuff out there. Alright, so we've got the path to the origin. Actually, let's not do that. Let's just do this. Let's pump this data right into the standard path. And what we're going to do is, after you're in the standard path, we'll then walk you to all the cells. And that'll be nice and easy. Okay, so we have this array of cells that we need to walk to. So, get closest cell might be a good function to write. We want some kind of scouting cell array. We might even want to just while loop this and say, while it's not empty. Let's see here. Let's see. Let us divine, as Day9 would say. So we have our current position, right? When we've walked to the origin, so we need some kind of 0.3d that is our current position, or our planned position, more like. And that'll be at the origin. And starting at the origin, we're just gonna... I'm just gonna do this in the most brute force way, and I can clean it up later. I just want the logic in and working so I can see it going. So we're gonna go through every cell in the array, find the closest, float dist, cell pointer closest cell is null, float distance C4 magnitude. Actually, we can just use squared mag. We don't really care, right? Because we're comparing them all using the squared magnitude, so it's not the end of the world. It's not going to actually it's not going to change a ton in terms of, so say I have something at distance 1 and something at distance 2. So 1 squared is still 1, 2 squared is 4. But when you're doing comparisons and you don't care about the actual magnitude, it's not going to actually change anything, and it saves us a square root operation each time we do this. And I use ++I out of a habit I learned a long time ago. A smart compiler should honestly not care about the difference. It's just a habit for me. I don't trust the compiler to do a lot of smart things. I don't know if it actually makes a difference in a modern compiler. It probably doesn't, honestly. Let's see here. Scouting. So we're going to grab our scouting cell. We have to pull the origin out of it. And we're looking for the distance from our current position, so our, what I should say our planned position, to the origin. And you're a 3D point. You're a 2D point. So let's just convert this to a point 2D. We're just going to shave Z off because we don't really care a ton. listen to Handmade Hero rant about how bad the Visual Studio compiler is. I'd rather not. I bounce back and forth on how much of his stuff I like. I watch his streams, and as much as I like his work, he's got some really old habits clearly built into his style of programming. Specifically how he's using C++, but writing C code still for the most part. I like something that uses the features of the language. For example, he writes 0, whereas a standard programmer these days will use null if you're talking about a pointer, and then you'll have modern programmers will write null pointer, right? There are 3 different things that all mean the same exact thing, but they all show intent differently. 0 gives you absolutely no information. Null at least tells you that, okay, this probably should be a pointer, versus null pointer is an actual language designated keyword that says this is made for pointers. So, I don't know. Stuff like that is kind of what bothers me, and I understand it just comes from his experiences in programming up until now, but it's still something that bothers the hell out of me. And he's got some other practices that are somewhat archaic, unfortunately. And I really don't like to see those kind of getting transferred onto people. But, I don't know. He teaches a lot of good information at the same time. So I can't exactly fault him for any of it. Especially when I'm about to write a bunch of code that's really terrible. If the distance is less than the closest distance, then the closest distance is the distance. What the heck is it playing? There we go. Better. Much better. And then the closest cell, right? And this is just brute force, the ugliest way to do this. And that's fine for now. I can clean it later. As I said, I don't really care a ton. The moment we start worrying about optimization and doing things in weird ways, we start cluttering the code with extra crap. And for now, we're going to avoid doing that if we can. Okay, so using the planned position, while the scouting cell array get element count is greater than 0, we're going to do everything in here. Actually, watch, this will probably get reformatted in a heartbeat. Yeah, it does. Thank you, Visual Studio. Okay. I don't usually like its reformatting properties, but for once it actually probably would have been nice. Okay, so we find the closest cell to us. We're going to go to our path. We're going to add a new point. And that point is going to be the closest cell origin, which unfortunately is a point 2D, right? And our path have 3D points. So we have to convert over to a 3D point, and we have to get the elevation. Game world. I think there's a get terrain height. Yeah, there is. Cell origin. Cell origin.x, cell origin.y, standard stuff. And this will give us a point 3D that has the height data included. And for now, we're just doing stupid stuff. We're telling him walk to the center of each one. Eventually, we can swap this out for something that says, walk close enough that it gives you visibility of the terrain, and then leave. Excuse me. Also, the other weird thing that this isn't going to take into effect right now that I will have to fix in the future, it doesn't deal with terrain that you can't navigate. It just doesn't. Although then again, I'm refactoring pretty much the entire terrain system off stream. So what you guys see here in the current terrain system you see is nice, but there are some very, very major flaws with it specifically in how it generates the Verneuil polygons, that I am trying to clean and fix up. I've got an algorithm that works about 10 times faster and is much cleaner for me as a game designer to use. Let's see, scouting cell array dots. We are going to find the element that is our closest cell, and then we are going to remove the elements, just so we don't reconsider it. And then our planning, or planned position, is going to be the cell origin. There we go. Ooh, I should create this in a point 3D fashion. Point 3D, 3D, waypoint. And I'm just going to pull this up here. Open, shut, singular. This does not need such ugly definitions inside, and that can do that. What did I miss? Open, open, shut. Oh, shut. Da-dum-dump. Okay, cool. So this will go to every single cell, and since we're dumping all this information into our path, we should have a valid path at the end of this, at which point it should just travel from one point to the next, just like it always does. And yeah, as Kotu fans have been saying, there's probably a much better way to do this. We can probably jump in and say, oh, well, maybe you should, you know, instead, and let's do this where we can see it. So there he goes, as he proceeds to kind of bounce all over the place. I'm not a huge fan of it. Is that it? I think that's it. Let's try actually telling him to scout an area that's further off and see what it looks like. So we'll tell him to go to like 1, 1 and do everything in a 3-block radius. So he's probably going to wander off the map for this. Not the end of the world. Except that he's not. It looks like he's actually bouncing through everything based on origin here. I wonder if my gathering is off. Let's see here. When I... it's kind of funny to watch him like bounce from place to place here. When I generate this path, it's going to go from start through to the end, and then at the end, it should then proceed to have all these extra points attached. Why did that not work the way I expected it to? That... I guess maybe 1, 1 was within this space, and so he then proceeded to... no, that doesn't make sense. Also, I like how he's still going. Also, how he's starving as he does this. This is where hilarity kicks in, because he's out doing something for such a long time that he's probably gonna starve while he's out here. That's another thing that needs to get added as a feature. We need to add in essentially what's going to end up being kind of a job block, so that they stop